This is our last day of video production for Police Dynamics here in Riviera Maya, Mexico. The weather has not been cooperating very much, and neither has my camera equipment, but hopefully we got both of them resolved here for just a little bit, at least long enough to continue this discussion on discretion. We talked a little bit yesterday about the principle of discretion and how a lot of it's been limited because we have made discretionary choices based on principles or based on factors other than the character of the individual. I know that when I was first certified, I went through basic training as a police officer in South Carolina way back in, 1982. I remember one of the instructors telling us that really we shouldn't exercise discretion out there on the street. That, for example, when we stop a car for a traffic violation, we should have already made up our mind whether or not we're going to issue a ticket before we even approach the car. And I guess the idea behind that was to try to treat everybody fairly, which really and truly doesn't happen in the real world. Perhaps in a future video we'll be able to talk about the principle of fairness versus the principle of justice and how they differ, even though we oftentimes get them confused. But suffice it to say that in reality that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. In fact, I made a lot of bad discretionary choices as a young officer trying to apply that particular principle, which really was a non-principle, because it doesn't really work in the real world. For example, if I watched a car blast through a red light, let's say, or maybe two cars blast through a red light, the first one that I stop has got some punk kid with an attitude, and maybe I stopped him before and issued him warnings and given him off, or given him an opportunity to get off the violation before, and he continues to flagrantly violate the law, I'm probably going to write him a ticket for running the red light. On the other hand, if I stop another car going through the red light, and it turns out it's a husband rushing his wife to the hospital because she's in labor, I'm probably not going to issue him a ticket. In fact, I'll probably give him an emergency escort to the ER. So it's the same violation, but if I had already made my mind up before I made the stop that I was going to issue a ticket, in other words, made my mind up I was not going to exercise discretion, I would have made a really bad choice under those two different scenarios. Let me tell you how this works in real life. Let's just take a basic violation, something as common as a speeding offense. Let's say you clock somebody on radar and they're busting 15 miles an hour with the speed limit or whatever. What are your options? What are your discretionary choices that you might choose to employ on something as simple as a routine traffic stop for a speeding violation? Well, the option that you always have is to do nothing. I mean, believe it or not, you just turn your head, let them go. That is a discretionary choice. You have chosen not to exercise any level of authority, enforcement authority in that scenario, and that is a discretionary choice that you have made and you have a right to make. So you might choose on a minor violation such as that to do absolutely nothing and just let the offense go on by. Maybe it's the middle of the night, maybe there's no cars on the road, maybe there's some other reasons why you might choose not to take enforcement action, but you let them go. That would be option number one. Option number two might be that you do something as simple as flicking your headlights or turning your blue lights on and off. That is, believe it or not, an exercise of authority, even if you choose not to actually pull them over or point the finger at them. I've done that before, this finger, not the other finger, and give them a warning. Hey, I saw you, I made note of it, you need to slow things down. That would be an exercise of discretionary authority as well. A third option might be that you would actually make the traffic stop and issue a verbal warning. No points, no written tickets, no written record, just a verbal warning. That would be option number three. A fourth option might be you write them a written warning. You say, okay, we're not going to give any points associated with this, but there's not going to be any official penalty attached to it, but we are going to make a record of the fact that you were caught violating the law, and that in itself is an exercise of executive authority, and that would be that would fall under the banner of enforcement discretion. Or a fifth option might be you pull them over, but instead of writing them the ticket for the actual violation, so let's say 15 over the speed limit, you decide to cut them a break. Maybe you cut them a break on the points. You cite them for some lesser included offense that doesn't carry as great a penalty. That would be an exercise of enforcement or executive authority as well. That would be a discretionary choice. A sixth option might be, well, you actually write them a ticket for the offense that they committed, 12 or 15 miles over the speed limit, whatever it is. But a seventh choice might be that not only am I going to write you a ticket for the violation that I caught you at, but we're going to look for any other violations that might be out there. We're going to do a full equipment inspection to make sure your tread depth is correct, to make sure that your turn signals are working properly, there's no equipment violations, and cite you for those if I find them. Or maybe you didn't sign the back of your registration card. That was an issue some years ago in South Carolina. And I will cite you for it, the offense that you committed, and other offenses that I might be able to ascertain as a result of the traffic stop. So the point I want to make is we have a simple traffic violation, routine traffic stop, and there are 7 enforcement options that you have available to you that you can choose from. Now the question becomes, which choice do you make? How do you choose amongst those 7 as to which one you're going to apply to this particular situation? Some people might say, well, you got to choose whatever choice you've chosen for other people in the past for the same offense. That's what you got to choose for this person to make it fair as possible. Well, that really limits your options. That means that whatever your very first enforcement action was, that's what you're limited to for the rest of your career. You got to keep making that same choice. I think a better way of making that determination is by determining the character of the offender and letting the character of the offender determine which one of those 7 choices that you make. So if you find someone that seems to be genuinely repentant, they took their mind off what they were doing, they were violating the speed limit, but they don't have anything else on their record, and they seem to be legitimately repentant about the fact that they committed this violation, you might let them go off very easy, maybe with a warning or something. On the other hand, you get somebody with a really bad attitude that's disrespectful to you, that's disrespectful to authority, that's just flagrant about how he wants to go about and arrogantly violating the law here, well, you're probably going to write him up, and maybe for other things as well. You make these choices all the time, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as we're making it on the principles of character, letting the character of the offender determine which option we choose. So the bottom line is this: it's very much like the dynamic of discipline in the dynamic leadership series. Let the nature of the offense determine your range of options, and then let the character of the offender determine which option you choose amongst those various options. Now that means you got to be quick at determining or making at least some judgment about this person's character, good or bad, and where they might fall in the continuum. You also, of course, have to understand the law, the policies that you have in your particular state and jurisdiction, so you know exactly what your range of options are. And if it's a DUI offense, you probably don't have a lot of options. You're probably going to have to make an arrest. If he's somewhere in that zone about whether he's actually above the legal limit or not, maybe there's some level of discretion that you can make there. But in a DUI case, your options might be very, very limited. In a domestic violence case, your options might be very, very limited. But the principle still applies. You make an evaluation of the person's character and make your decision based upon that. Now, in the next video series, we'll talk a little bit more about how do you make that determination and what are the continuums of the offender. We'll look at the 5 types of offenders in that video, and that'll be the last one, as long as my battery holds out, that we're able to do here at Riviera Maya, Mexico. So Sheriff Ray Nash, until next time.